Hey, it's Minute Book Reports, and in this video, I wanted to talk about Season 2 of a series of unfortunate events on Netflix, and sort of talk about them in the context of the books. And I want to talk about the whole season as one sort of whole unit rather than sort of breaking it up per book or per episode. But before that, I want to say thank you so much for watching all of the videos on a series of unfortunate events in March. If you watched them, I really appreciate that. It was a lot of work, starting from basically the 1st of March until the end of March, making all those videos, reading all those books. And although it may seem like, those little 2-minute summary videos are very fast and easy, I do actually read all the books because I love reading, and I'm not just here for the summaries. I think to be way more efficient, I would just go online and read the summaries and then make the videos. I could probably do 5 videos a week, but that's not the idea behind this channel. The idea is to love reading, and so of course I'm gonna read all the books that I talk about, that I make videos about, and I hope that comes across in these types of videos. So I just want to say thank you so much for watching those videos if you watch them. So when it comes to season 2 of a series of unfortunate events, which covers 5 books this time, I decided that in watching these episodes, I think probably by the 2nd episode, I realized that the series on Netflix is obviously very different from the book series, and if you want to know my thoughts, I'm gonna post another video. It's gonna be a super long video sometime this week that shares my thoughts on just all the books. I'm gonna basically rank all the books from my least favorite to my most favorite, and that's more of an in-depth discussion. It's not for everyone. The biggest thing I got away from this season was that the show is different from the books, and of course that's very obvious, but more so the audience for the show is different than the audience for the books, and I hope that that's what people take away if they read both the books and they watch the show, because you can tell a lot by how the show is made, and you can kind of imagine who that audience is, and then you can read the books and then you can kind of figure out who that audience is. And I think that's the biggest takeaway from season 2. And I realized this when the librarian, or Olivia, became a centerpiece for this series, for this particular season, as well as Jacques Snicket. I think those two characters having such a prominent role in the season 2 sort of story arc versus the books, where they basically just have like one book for each character, I think that shows who the audience is for the television show. Now, to the credit of the show, by extending sort of the character history of Olivia and Jacques, when both of those characters, spoiler, when both of those characters die, it makes us feel like we really lost a friend. We lost someone that we got to know. Whereas in the books, I definitely could see where you don't really get to know anyone who really dies, except I guess at the end, the final book. But you really don't get to know anyone, because you get introduced to all these new characters each book, and then it's like a guardian or like a friend of the Baudelaires, and then they die. They just something happens to them, and then you never see them again. So there's no real connection with those characters. But in the show, they build this story arc, and I expect in the next season, season 3, I'm really hoping that we get to know Kit Snicket and we get to know Dewey, because I feel like those two characters are going to be so important for this dramatic story arc that they're probably going to write. Another thing that I also thought about was motivation of the characters. And to me, this is so important when you talk about characters in a story, or I guess people in real life. What is their motivation, and why is it that they do what they do? That's so important to the plot. It's not just their actions, but it's why they do it. And that's one of the things that my summary videos don't quite convey, is necessarily the motivation why behind characters do certain things that they do. And in the show, we get a better understanding of certain characters' motivation. Now, it changes because in the books, for example, like Madame Lulu, Olivia, her motivation at the end is questionable. It was often, why was she helping Count Olaf? Whereas in the Netflix show, clearly she's sort of a spy. She's working for the VFD, and she wants to help the kids, but she dies tragically. And that's sort of the end of her storyline. But we see it in the books, it's sort of ambiguous, almost to the point where, again, Similar to Aunt Josephine, she almost sells out the kids, and as the reader, we're kind of left with, wait, was she a good guy or a bad guy? Was she brave or was she a coward? And in the books, it's not as clear, but in the show, it's very much clear. And so I hope that people take note of that as well, that it's motivation, it's so important to understand why characters do what they do. Whether you're reading the book or whether you're watching the show, it's just that in the show, it's a lot more apparent. It's clear. They definitely point you in the right direction as to why characters are doing what they're doing. But in the book, it's not so clear, and that's left up to the reader. And the last thing is, I'm really enjoying these episodes on Netflix. I know that they're different from the books, and the people who are diehard book fans, I'm sure they may not like them, but to me, again, it's two different audiences. It's a very similar story. They're not the same story, but it's a very similar story. But it at least may get people interested in kind of figuring out what's going to happen next. And the books are very accessible. They're not long, relatively speaking, and the characters are pretty much the same. At least the main characters are pretty much the same from the books to the Netflix show, so it's not that much of a stretch. The show introduces a lot of other elements, and those elements are clearly made for a Netflix audience, an audience of today, of adults or young adults or people who want those cliffhangers, the people who want things and storylines and all these different things that are a lot deeper than necessarily what we're used to in terms of a book. Because the book is mysterious, but it's not as like conspiracy theory filled. You know, like the show has all these different things that are trying to connect to each other, and I guess at the end maybe there's going to be this convergent point where everything sort of meets up. But in the book, a lot of things are left unsaid. The series is full of holes that we actually don't know by the end, and I hope that people, rather than criticize the show, I just hope that they recognize that it's clearly made for two different audiences. But I'm hoping that people, after they watch the show, if they're impatient to know what happens, that the answers, the books are right there in front of them. They can go to the library and borrow the books, and they can know what happens in the story. So again, I'm gonna make a ranking video from my least favorite to my most favorite books of the series. It's gonna be a long video. It's not for everyone, but I encourage you, if you're curious about the books and sort of my thoughts on each of the books, going a lot more in depth, that is definitely the video for you. But thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time. Bye.